At first glance, Jaime Lannister is nothing more than a villain. An arrogant, selfish, and violent knight who has an incestuous relationship with his sister and destroys everything that comes in his way. He is impulsive, reckless, and tries to murder Bran with little to no remorse. Implies that he would hurt Arya if he finds him, and just to intimidate Ned, he kills 3 of his men. He seems to be the classic irredeemable villain type, which is how George R.R. Martin envisioned him at the beginning as well. In his original draft, Jaime takes the throne by murdering everyone in his way, and in the beginning, we can really see this version of Jaime in the books. Ruthless and sadistic, but as the story went on, he grows into someone much more complex than even the author imagined. Beyond the golden armor and arrogant smile lies one of George R.R. Martin's most complex creations, and one of the most divisive portrayals in Game of Thrones. In the books, Jaime's story is about shame, honor, and the painful path toward redemption. In the show, his arc takes a different shape, sometimes faithful, sometimes contradictory, and in the end, controversial. Just like with all the other characters, Jaime's past is essential to understanding the man he becomes. His history is deeply intertwined with the great events of Westeros, and it sheds light on why he sees the world the way he does, why he mocks honor, why he distrusts vows, and how he becomes the man he is. He was born in 266 AC as the firstborn son of Sir Tywin Lannister, the heir to Casterly Rock, and his wife, Lady Joanna. Jaime was born shortly after his twin sister Cersei, while holding her foot. King Aerys II Targaryen sent both Jaime and Cersei their weight in gold as a name-day gift, and commanded Lord Tywin to bring the children to court when they were old enough to travel. It is currently unknown whether this visit to King's Landing actually occurred, as the royal court came to Casterly Rock following the death of Lord Tytos Lannister in 267 AC. Jaime and Cersei did visit King's Landing in 272 AC, when their mother brought them from Casterly Rock for the anniversary tourney held to celebrate the 10th year of King Aerys' reign. Jaime and Cersei were inseparable in their early childhood. They looked so similar as children that not even their father was able to tell them apart. Sometimes they would dress in each other's clothes and spend the whole day as each other. As children, they played together in the bowels of Casterly Rock, where the caged lions of his late grandfather, Tytos, were kept. Jaime and Cersei would dare each other to climb into the cage. Cersei and Jaime slept together in the same bed when they were very young, and even went as far as to experiment together in a sexual manner at a young age. During one of these encounters, they were caught by a servant who informed their mother. Jaime's bedchamber was immediately moved to the other side of the castle, whilst a guard was placed near Cersei's bedchamber. The twins were told never to do anything like that again, as Joanna would otherwise be forced to tell their father. Jaime's mother died not long thereafter, in 273 AC, whilst giving birth to Jaime's younger brother, Tyrion. Even though Tyrion is a malformed dwarf, and both his father and sister despise the young Lannister, Jaime developed an affection for his youngest sibling, and treated him with kindness and respect. Shortly after Joanna's death, the Princess of Dorne visited Casterly Rock with her 2 youngest children, Elia and Oberyn Martell. When she eventually proposed a betrothal between Elia and Jaime, she was refused. In 276 AC, when Jaime was 10 years old, Lord Tywin hosted a tourney to celebrate the birth of young Prince Viserys Targaryen. During this tourney, Tywin suggested to King Aerys that Jaime could squire for Rhaegar Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, but Aerys refused and named the sons of other lords to the position instead. According to Cersei, young Jaime was only interested in dogs, horses, swords, and her. Jaime went to Craighall at the age of 11 and spent 4 years squiring for Lord Sumner Craighall, alongside Merritt Frey. He occasionally visited Casterly Rock during this time, and raged when, in 278 AC, his sister Cersei was brought to King's Landing by their father. At the age of 13, while still a squire, Jaime won his first tourney melee. Whilst a squire to Lord Sumner, Jaime was sent to Riverrun, as Lord Tywin and Lord Hoster Tully had been considering betrothing Jaime to Hoster's younger daughter, Lysa. According to Sumner, the message Jaime was to bring to Hoster could not be entrusted to a raven. He spent a fortnight at Riverrun, being seated next to Lysa during meals. Jaime ignored her, however. being more interested in the stories of Hoster's younger brother, Sir Brynden, a famous warrior who had fought in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and whom Jaime asked for stories about the war. Sir Adam Marbrand, the heir of Lord Daemon Marbrand of Ashmark, is a childhood friend of Jaime's. The two have remained friends to this day. And even in these early years, Jaime's path kept crossing with names that would shape his destiny. The Martells once considered Elia for him, and yet Jaime would stand powerless as her children were murdered in King's Landing, an atrocity that forever stained his honor. The Tullys welcomed him at Riverrun, but later he would fight against them, rot in their dungeons, and ultimately swear to protect Catelyn Tully's daughters, only to fail them. And then there was Rhaegar. Jaime once dreamed of serving at his side, admiring him above all others, but in the end he would be remembered as the man who slew Rhaegar's father and failed to save Rhaegar's children. From the very beginning, the threads of loyalty, betrayal, and tragedy that would define the Kingslayer were already being woven. When he was 15, he and his master accompanied Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Barristan Selmy in their campaign against the Kingswood Brotherhood. Jaime fought bravely against the Smiling Knight, although was not the one to kill him, and saved the life of Lord Crakehall from another of the outlaws. After the Brotherhood had been defeated, Jaime was knighted for valor shown on the battlefield by Sir Arthur Dayne, a member of the Kingsguard of King Aerys II Targaryen. Jaime held a vigil in a nearby sept, and the next morning Arthur cut through to Jaime's shoulder when lightly tapping the youth's tunic with dawn. For Jaime, this was the dream. He wanted to be Arthur Dayne, noble, valiant, a knight who stood for something greater than himself. But in a cruel twist of fate, Jaime's path didn't lead him toward Dayne's light. It led him towards the Smiling Knight's shadow. Somewhere along the way, Jaime became the very thing he once despised, the arrogant killer who took joy in his skill, who laughed at honor, who mocked vows and slaughtered men in the streets. Dayne's sword, Dawn, symbolized purity and virtue. Jaime's sword became tainted with blood, infamy, and the whispers of Kingslayer. That clash with the Smiling Knight was foreshadowing, a mirror held up to Jaime's life. As a boy, he stood beside Arthur Dayne, dreaming of being a true knight. As a man, he looked in the mirror and saw only the Smiling Knight grinning back. Now a knight, Jaime was to return to Casterly Rock. He decided to stop in King's Landing en route to visit his sister, from whom he had been separated for years. At an old inn on Eel Alley, Cersei informed Jaime that their father, Lord Tywin Lannister, intended to betroth him to Lysa Tully, and had gone as far as inviting Lord Hoster to King's Landing to discuss the dower. Cersei suggested that Jaime become a member of the Kingsguard instead, replacing the recently deceased Sir Harlan Grandison. Though this would require Jaime to give up his claim to Casterly Rock and his position as Tywin's heir, it would allow him to be close to Cersei and free himself of the unwanted marriage to Lysa. After a night of passionate, he gave his consent to Cersei's plan. While the siblings expected Tywin to oppose it, Cersei claimed he would not openly object. She promised to do the rest, and 1 month later, Jaime received news at Casterly Rock that he had been chosen for the Kingsguard and was to present himself to the king during the grand tourney at Harrenhal, where he would say his vows and don his cloak. Jaime's and Cersei's plan did not entirely work as expected. Their father, furious about the king's decision, pleaded illness and resigned his position as Hand of the King. He returned to Casterly Rock, taking Cersei with him, which separated the siblings once more. Jaime was raised to the Kingsguard by its Lord Commander, Sir Gerald Hightower, in a ceremony at Harrenhal in 281 AC, making him the youngest knight ever to be raised to the order. That night, however, King Aerys soured the honor by sending him back to King's Landing to guard Queen Rhaella and Prince Viserys, depriving Jaime of the chance to participate in Lord Walter Went's tourney. It was that moment during which Jaime realized that the king had only chosen him for the Kingsguard to slight Lord Tywin, of whom Aerys was insanely jealous, and to rob him of his heir. He realized that he hadn't been chosen for his valor, but as a pawn in the feud between Tywin and Aerys. His white cloak wasn't a badge of honor, it was a chain. From that moment, Jaime's life was no longer his own, and the ideals of knighthood he once believed in began to rot. Jaime left for King's Landing at once. When a mystery knight appeared at the tourney, King Aerys became convinced that it was Jaime who had defied his orders and secretly returned. However, the Mystery Knight disappeared and nothing further came of the king's suspicions. By being raised to the Kingsguard, Jaime gave up his claim to Casterly Rock. Nonetheless, Tywin continued to regard him as his true heir and was always angry to see Jaime dressed all in white instead of the red and gold of House Lannister. In 281 AC, Jaime entered the Kingsguard full of youthful promise, knighted by Arthur Dayne himself and wearing the white cloak with pride. But within just 2 years, that pride curdled into disillusionment. Jaime grew more and more disillusioned, witnessing the Mad King's growing insanity and tendency for burning men alive. Instead of serving the realm, he served a madman. Instead of protecting the innocent, he stood by helpless as they burned. In 282 AC, Jaime witnessed the executions of Brandon and Lord Rickard Stark, standing at the foot of the Iron Throne as the two Starks were dying. When Brandon and Rickard were executed before his eyes, Jaime's lesson was not justice, but survival. Jaime coped by going away inside, focusing on thoughts of Cersei instead of the events occurring in front of him, closing himself off to endure horrors by detaching from them. Afterwards, he was reminded by his Lord Commander, Sir Gerald Hightower, that he swore a vow to guard the king, not to judge him. The Kingsguard, meant to embody the highest ideals of knighthood, became for Jaime a cage of silence and complicity. The most eventful year of Jaime's life came in 283 AC, with the start of Robert's Rebellion. By this time, the white cloak no longer represented honor to Jaime. It was already a shroud. 2 years of serving a mad king had left him disillusioned, forced to watch atrocities while standing silent. Now, with war breaking out across the realm, Jaime found himself bound tighter than ever to the Iron Throne, powerless to act except as a witness to madness. After the Battle of the Bells, it became apparent to Aerys that Robert was a serious threat to Targaryen rule. He devised a plot with the help of his chief pyromancers, which involved the placement of caches of wildfire all throughout the city. The plan was to burn the entire city to the ground rather than lose it to Robert. His new hand, Lord Carlton Chelstead, who had been elevated to the position after the exile of the previous hand, Lord John Connington, following the Battle of the Bells, eventually confronted Aerys about his plan. Failing to convince Aerys to give up the plan, Chelstead resigned the office, flinging his chain of office to the floor. For that, Aerys burned him alive. As Aerys did not trust his newest addition to the Kingsguard, Jaime was kept close by, and therefore he heard and saw it all. Staying in the Red Keep scarred Jaime more than any battlefield ever could. Aerys grew aroused by burning people, and the night Chelstead was burned, Aerys visited the chambers of his wife. Jaime and his sworn brother, Sir Jonathor Darry, stood guard outside Queen Rhaella's bedchamber while Aerys raped her, listening to her cries. When Jaime, feeling conflicted, eventually commented to Jonathor that they were sworn to protect the queen as well, Jon replied, "But not from him." He had taken vows to protect, but in practice those vows chained him to a madman's cruelty. He stood by as Brandon strangled, Rickard burned, and Rhaella screamed. And when he questioned it, he was told that a Kingsguard protects the king and never judges him. To survive, Jaime learned to go away inside, to numb himself, to pretend he didn't care. The detachment hardened into the cynicism we see in him later. Shortly after, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen left the Red Keep to face the rebels on the Trident. For Jaime, Rhaegar was everything a knight should be: noble, honorable, and worthy of admiration. To ride at his side in battle would have been Jaime's dream, a chance to finally live up to the vows he had sworn. And the day the prince left, Jaime begged Rhaegar to take him along, suggesting one of the other Kingsguard knights could remain at the king's side. But instead, Rhaegar, with quiet regret, left him behind, refusing the suggestion, admitting that King Aerys wanted to keep Jaime close as a hostage against his father, Lord Tywin. Rhaegar promised an angry and disappointed Jaime that changes would be made when he returned from the battlefield, and he entrusted Jaime with a duty of the highest honor, protecting Elia Martell and her children. It was a promise that gave Jaime purpose, a chance to prove himself. And yet, history turned it into one of the great tragedies of his life. But the weight on Jaime's shoulders that day only grew heavier. While a rebel army led by Lord Eddard Stark raced towards King's Landing after Rhaegar's death at the Trident, Lord Tywin Lannister appeared first at the gates of the capital with 12,000 men. His main concerns were that King Aerys II Targaryen would be capable of killing Jaime out of spite, as well as that Jaime himself could do something rash. Though Lord Varys, the Master of Whisperers, counseled Aerys against opening the gates, the king listened to Grand Maester Pycelle, who told him that his old hand Tywin had come to his defense. As such, the city gates were open to Tywin and his army. But once inside, Tywin betrayed Aerys and began the sack of King's Landing. As the sole Kingsguard remaining in King's Landing, the defense of the Red Keep became Jaime's responsibility. Knowing that he did not stand a chance to defend the castle, he sent a messenger back to the king, asking for leave to make terms with the attackers. The messenger came back with Aerys' order that Jaime should bring him Lord Tywin's head to prove that he was no traitor. After years of being treated as a pawn in the feud between Tywin and Aerys, he now stood caught between them, ordered by the king to kill his own father. For a boy of 17, the command was unbearable. Obey and become a kinslayer, refuse and betray the vows that bound him to his white cloak. But even that horror was only the beginning. The messenger also informed him that Rosart was with the king. He understood what was coming next. Aerys was preparing to burn the city and every soul within it. And in that moment, Jaime realized his oaths had left him with only one choice. Jaime killed Rosart, who was dressed as a common soldier and hurrying to a postern gate. When the king in the throne room saw the blood on Jaime's sword, he demanded to know whether it was Tywin's, renewing his command that Jaime should bring him his father's head. Otherwise, Jaime would burn with all the other traitors. When Jaime answered that it was Rosart's blood, the frightened Aerys ran towards the Iron Throne. Jaime hauled him off the steps and killed his king with a single slash across his throat, thereby preventing him from giving the command to burn the city to some other pyromancer. In that instant, Jaime became both hero and villain. By cutting down Rosart, he stopped the wildfire plot from being unleashed. By slaying Aerys, he saved King's Landing from burning with 500,000 innocent lives inside. But the act that should have crowned him as the realm's greatest protector became the stain that would never wash away. To the world, he was not the boy who saved a city, but the Kingslayer, the Oathbreaker who butchered his king. That contradiction of doing the right thing and being damned for it would haunt Jaime for the rest of his life. Lord Tywin's men, led by Sir Ellis Westerling and Lord Roland Craighall, burst into the throne room in time to see that Jaime had killed the king, forestalling any chance for Jaime to steal away and let someone else claim responsibility. Jaime told them to advise all who were still fighting that the king was dead and to spare anyone who yielded. Lord Craighall then asked whether a new king should be proclaimed as well, indicating that it could be Lord Tywin or Lord Robert Baratheon, or that even a new Targaryen king could be proclaimed. Jaime mused on the possibility of choosing Viserys or Rhaegar's son Aegon as the new king with Tywin as his hand, but realizing that both boys shared the same blood as Aerys and thus the same propensity for madness, Jaime declared to Lord Craighall that it was all the same to him. He then seated himself on the Iron Throne, waiting to see who would come to claim it. In those moments after the king's death, Jaime showed no hunger for power. He gave orders to spare those who yielded. He dismissed the question of succession with cold indifference, and when he finally sat upon the Iron Throne, it was not out of ambition, but exhaustion. To him, the throne was just another uncomfortable seat. Yet appearances told a different story. When Eddard Stark entered the hall and saw Jaime lounging on the throne with his sword across his knees, he saw arrogance, pride, treachery, the Kingslayer basking in his crime. That misunderstanding would be the beginning of the uneasy, bitter relationship between Jaime Lannister and Ned Stark. Ned was not interested in Jaime's explanations. He only had to look at him to judge him guilty. So it seems that Jaime felt he couldn't explain the wildfire plot to people, that no one would listen or believe him. But what really bothered Jaime was the judgment. In the following days, Jaime did what no one ever thanked him for. He hunted down the last of the pyromancers, Bellis and Garrigus, ensuring the wildfire plot could never be carried out. Quietly, he may have saved King's Landing twice, but none of that mattered. Although Eddard urged Robert to strip Jaime of the White Cloak, arguing that he should at least be made to join the Night's Watch, Robert listened to Jon Arryn instead. To Eddard Stark, he was an oathbreaker who deserved exile to the Wall. To Robert, he was useful enough to pardon, a Kingsguard in white whose shame could be mocked over wine. Jaime was pardoned at the coronation of Robert I Baratheon together with Varys and Pycelle, and continued to serve in the Kingsguard along with Sir Barristan Selmy. At Robert's coronation feast, Robert joked about the fact that Jaime was already being called Kingslayer. He is known to himself, other Kingsguard, and as far as Winterfell and Essos by that nickname. The cruel irony was that the act Jaime considered his finest, saving 500,000 lives, was seen by the world as his greatest sin. From that day on, Jaime Lannister was trapped in a role he could never escape, the villain in everyone else's story. In the years that followed, Jaime embraced the name that had damned him. He wore the title of Kingslayer like a shield, making no effort to change the world's opinion. He was haunted by the memories of Ned Stark, of Prince Rhaegar, and of his sworn brothers in the Kingsguard. To him, they were constant reminders of his failure, the oaths he broke, the blood he spilled, and the lives he failed to protect. Deep down, Jaime was ashamed of the man he had become, and the way he coped was by building a mask, mocking knighthood, sneering at the Kingsguard, laughing at the very ideals he once believed in. If people said he was a bad knight, Jaime agreed and called knighthood corrupt. If they said the gods would punish him, he claimed the gods were lies. His cynicism, his sarcasm, his nihilism, all of it was armor, a defense to shield himself from judgment and from the shame he carried within. In the years after Robert's coronation, Jaime's life became defined by his relationship with Cersei. He stood as part of her honor guard at her wedding. But while the realm celebrated her union with Robert Baratheon, Jaime lay with her in secret that very morning. For Jaime, the White Cloak no longer meant honor. It was simply a disguise that allowed him to stay at her side. Jaime and Cersei continued their illicit relationship after her wedding. Cersei refused to join her new husband on his hunting trips as to be able to spend time with Jaime. Jaime accompanied Robert and Cersei to Greenstove, where Robert went to visit his mother's family. Jaime dubbed the castle Green Shit when he first saw it, and he convinced Cersei to do the same. They spent a fortnight with the Estermonts. During one of those nights, Jaime followed Robert on Cersei's request to confirm her suspicion that Robert was sleeping with his cousin. Jaime and Cersei slept together that night, and Cersei likes to believe that their eldest son, Joffrey, was conceived that night. Jaime and Cersei would have 3 children: Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen. Though believed by the realm to be Robert's children, Jaime is the father of all 3 and was present for at least one of the births. While Cersei also became pregnant by Robert once, she had Jaime find a woman to cleanse her. Jaime embraced a life built on deception. To the world, they were Robert's heirs. To Jaime, they were his only legacy, his proof that he belonged to Cersei alone. Jaime wears the mask of the callous Kingslayer because it's easier to play the villain than to face the weight of his own shame. Confronting the past means grappling with trauma, broken vows, and the blood on his hands. So instead, he hides behind arrogance and scorn. He throws himself into the only 2 things that still make sense to him: fighting and Cersei. In combat and in sex, there's no past and no future, only the moment. As Jaime himself says, time sleeps when swords wake. It's his escape, his way to silence the voice of failure that haunts him. This period reveals the core of Jaime's flaw. Every choice he made, every vow he broke, was for her. He had traded Casterly Rock, honor, and reputation just to remain close to his twin. What might have been the life of one of Westeros' greatest knights became instead a secret existence, bound not to the realm or his vows, but to Cersei. And it is here that Jaime's story becomes inseparable from hers, for better and for worse. After the death of their foster father, Lord Jon Arryn, King Robert I Baratheon travels north to visit Lord Eddard Stark at Winterfell and persuade him to become Jon's successor as Hand of the King. Jaime is chosen by Robert as Jon's successor as Warden of the East rather than Jon's son, young Lord Robert Arryn, who would have been the traditional appointee. The king is accompanied by much of his court, among them Jaime, Queen Cersei Lannister, and their brother Tyrion. This is when we first meet Jaime. They called him the Lion of Lannister to his face and whispered Kingslayer behind his back. Even Jon Snow, seeing him for the first time, thinks, this is what a king should look like. Outwardly, Jaime is everything Westeros admires, handsome, graceful, powerful. And yet his reputation is poisoned by the very act that defines him. From the start, we are shown the contradiction at the heart of Jaime Lannister. The perfect knight on the outside, but a man despised for his choices, carrying a truth no one else can see. While at Winterfell, Jaime and Cersei attend the feast given by House Stark. Jon's widow, Lysa Arryn, sends a coded message to her sister, Eddard's wife, Catelyn, alleging that the Lannisters murdered Jon. When Robert is away hunting, Cersei and Jaime are caught having sex in the first keep by Bran Stark. The boy is shocked and almost falls from the building. Jaime pulls him up, and then throws him out of the window, intending to kill him to keep the affair a secret. Bran survives, but falls into a coma. This act cements Jaime's role as one of the great villains at the start of the story. With 6 simple words, "The things I do for love," he reveals the core of his character. A man willing to sacrifice anyone, even an innocent child, to protect his bond with Cersei. It's the ultimate contradiction. Jaime, the knight who should protect the weak, instead tries to murder a boy. And yet, even in this monstrous act, we see his tragedy. He is trapped by his love for Cersei, and every choice he makes to hold on to her only drags him deeper into dishonor. Ned accepts Robert's invitation to be Hand, and in King's Landing he begins investigating the death of Jon Arryn. At this point in the story, Jaime is every bit the villain in the eyes of the Starks and much of the realm. His secret with Cersei is beginning to unravel, his children sitting on the throne under false names, while his own actions only deepen the hatred against him. During the Hand's tourney, Jaime wears his golden armor beneath his white cloak. He defeats Sir Andar Royce, Lord Bryce Caron, and Sir Barristan Selmy, but is unhorsed by Sandor Clegane. Meanwhile, Catelyn Stark, Lady of Winterfell, captures Jaime's brother Tyrion on suspicion of involvement in a botched assassination attempt on Bran Stark. In retaliation for Tyrion's capture, but ostensibly to create an uprising, Jaime breaks Kingsguard neutrality by leading Lannister men in an attack on Ned and his guards in the streets of King's Landing. By leading Lannister men against Ned Stark in the streets, Jaime proves what so many already whisper, that the Kingslayer does not serve honor, only himself and his family. Yet even there's complexity. Jaime's rage comes not just from duty to House Lannister, but from a fierce, genuine love for his brother Tyrion. In defending Tyrion, Jaime reveals a different side. Still loyal, still capable of love, but willing to cast aside vows and law to protect it. Jaime's confrontation with Ned Stark is important for more than just his loyalty to Tyrion. For Jaime, the duel was deeply personal. Ned was the man who slew Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. The knight Jaime admired above all others, the one he considered almost godlike. Facing Ned in single combat was Jaime's chance to measure himself against the man who carried that legendary reputation. And yet, when blades crossed, Jaime found himself disappointed. Ned was skilled, but not the peerless warrior the songs made him out to be. Jaime even grew angry when his own men interfered, because this was his one chance to face a legend. Not Selmy in his prime, not Dayne returned from the grave, but the man who had beaten Dayne in story and song. The chance was stolen from him, leaving Jaime unsatisfied, still chasing a standard of knighthood he would never reach. After their clash, Robert orders Ned and Jaime to make peace, but the Kingslayer has already fled King's Landing to join his father, Lord Tywin Lannister. Jaime begins massing a host at Casterly Rock, and the Lannisters ignore an inquiry into their actions by Sir Edmure Tully. Robert dies after being gored in the Kingswood by a boar, and the king is succeeded by Joffrey I Baratheon, who is actually Jaime's son. Jaime's army marches against the Riverlords, smashing Lord Vance and Lord Clement Piper in a battle in the hills below the Golden Tooth. Jaime then defeats Edmure's host in a battle under the walls of Riverrun, capturing the heir to House Tully. Jaime establishes 3 camps at Riverrun and besieges the castle. Meanwhile, Joffrey's small council dismisses Sir Barristan Selmy as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and names Jaime as his replacement. Robb Stark's northern army steals a surprise march on Jaime, intent on relieving Riverrun. Sir Brynden Tully raids Jaime's camps to draw him north of Riverrun, and Robb ambushes the Lannister detachment in the Whispering Wood. Seeing the battle is lost, Jaime fights bravely to try and cut Robb down, managing to kill Darren Hornwood, Eddard Karstark, and Torrhen Karstark before he is captured. Afterwards, the Stark and Tully forces are able to best Jaime's leaderless troops in the Battle of the Camps, and Jaime is imprisoned in Riverrun. Sir Stevron Frey proposes ransoming Jaime back to Tywin, but the suggestion is opposed by Northmen. For Tywin's cause, it was a disaster. For Jaime himself, it marked the beginning of a transformation. Stripped of his sword and thrown into chains at Riverrun, he was forced for the first time to live without the two things that had always defined him: his skill as a warrior and his bond with Cersei. The Kingslayer, so proud and untouchable, was now powerless. While the War of the Five Kings rages around him, Jaime is kept imprisoned in a comfortable tower cell at Riverrun. Unbeknownst to Jaime, Cersei takes their cousin Lancel Lannister as her lover in King's Landing. For Jaime, Cersei was everything: the reason he wore the white cloak, the reason he killed, the reason he lived. But for Cersei, Jaime was not irreplaceable. As soon as he was gone, she simply found another. It shows the imbalance at the heart of their bond. Jaime's love is absolute, while Cersei's is conditional, driven by convenience and control. Though Jaime does not yet know it, this moment marks the beginning of the slow unraveling of their relationship, the first crack in the illusion that their love was unbreakable. After arriving in the capital, Tyrion promises to help free Jaime to gain Cersei's support in his rule as Hand. Tyrion swears in open court that as part of a peace, he would trade Sansa and Arya Stark for the safe return of his brother. Sir Cleos Frey and Vylar travel to Riverrun with Tyrion's offer. Tyrion has a secret plan to free Jaime with false envoys, however. Distraught at the news of the alleged deaths of her sons Bran and Rickon Stark following the capture of Winterfell, Catelyn interrogates Jaime after the Battle of the Fords. He now has a shaggy beard, not having been allowed a razor, and his hair is unwashed and in tangles. Jaime's power and beauty are still apparent, however, and he resembles a magnificent yellow beast. At Riverrun, the Golden Knight is reduced to a chained, filthy prisoner, yet even in chains, his pride and sharp tongue remain intact. When Catelyn confronts him, he doesn't deny his crimes. Instead, he admits he pushed Bran from the tower, as if daring her to hate him more. This, honestly, twisted as it is, shows how Jaime wears the mask of the villain. If the world will call him Kingslayer and Oathbreaker, then he will embrace the role rather than expose his shame. But beneath the arrogance lies a deeper truth. Jaime is a man rotting inside, trapped by his love for Cersei and haunted by all the lives he failed to protect. The prisoner Catelyn sees is not just a beast in chains, but a man who has been living in chains of his own making long before Riverrun. In return for Lady Lysa Arryn marrying Lord Peter Baelish and returning to the King's Peace, Lord Tywin Lannister decides to return the title of Warden of the East to Lord Robert Arryn from Jaime. Catelyn Stark, acting on her own, releases Jaime from Riverrun in an attempt to make an unofficial exchange for her daughters. Along with his cousin and fellow captive Sir Cleos Frey and Catelyn's sworn sword Brienne of Tarth, Jaime begins the journey towards King's Landing. Jaime shaves his head so his golden locks will not be recognized, although he keeps the beard. He thinks he looks 5 years older, with a paler and thinner face and hollows under his eyes. This marks the true beginning of his transformation. For the first time in years, he is separated from Cersei, from the war, and even from his own image as the Golden Knight. With his hair shorn off and his face lean and hollow, Jaime feels older, diminished, as though the Kingslayer himself has been stripped away. Yet his journey with Brienne of Tarth will force him to confront who he really is beneath the armor and the mask. Catelyn's desperate gamble sets in motion the road where Jaime begins to change. Not through power or war, but through hardship, humiliation, and the company of someone who sees him for more than the Kingslayer. Brienne and Jaime have a complex relationship. At first, they hate each other. Jaime calls Brienne wench and thinks she's a stupid, ugly freak. Brienne calls Jaime Kingslayer and thinks he's a monster for his crimes. But Jaime and Brienne have some things in common. They're both outsiders in society, Jaime as the Kingslayer and Brienne as a misfit female warrior. The trio evade capture by Sir Robin Ryger and his party from Riverrun through Brienne's tactic of dropping boulders onto the chasing boat. Jaime approves of Brienne's decision to ignore the travel advice of the innkeeper at the Inn of the Kneeling Man, suspecting he is in league with bandits. Later, on the road between Maidenpool and Duskendale, Cleos is killed when the group is ambushed by bandits. Afterward, Jaime takes his sword and briefly duels Brienne in an attempt to escape, but both of them are caught unawares and captured by the brave companions led by Vargo Hoat, who have betrayed Lord Tywin and shifted allegiance to Robb Stark. Vargo suspects that his superior, Lord Roose Bolton, is thinking about going over to the Lannisters after their victory over Stannis Baratheon in the Battle of the Blackwater and their new alliance with House Tyrell. To prevent this, Vargo orders Zolo to chop Jaime's sword hand off, thinking that the blame would fall on Roose. His sword hand, the part that makes him who he is. It's the hand Jaime used to kill Aerys, to cripple Bran, to love Cersei. He loses his glory and his shame both at once, leaving what? Who am I now? Jaime asks. Proud Jaime Lannister is devastated, brought low. He almost just gives up and dies. And yet, it is in this moment of weakness that Jaime shows a different kind of strength. When the brave companions try to force themselves on Brienne, Jaime steps in. He can't fight, he can't wield a sword, but with nothing but his words, he shames them, mocks their manhood, and dares them to kill him first. And they back down. What makes this moment so striking is the contrast with his past. Years earlier, when he was at his peak as a knight of the Kingsguard, Jaime stood outside the chamber of Queen Rhaella, forced to listen as Aerys raped her. And he did nothing. He was sworn to protect her, but his vows chained him into silence. Now, at his weakest, when he has lost the very hand that made him Jaime Lannister, he finds the courage to act. He saves Brienne from suffering the same fate, not with steel, but with resolve. It's the first sign that Jaime can be more than just the Kingslayer. Stripped of his glory and his shame, he discovers the beginnings of the knight he once dreamed of becoming. Not defined by a sword, but by the choice to protect those who cannot protect themselves. At Harrenhal, in the steaming baths, Jaime Lannister bears more than his maimed body. He bears his soul. Broken, feverish, and close to collapse, he confesses to Brienne the truth that he has never spoken aloud, that when he killed King Aerys, it was not treachery, but mercy. He reveals the wildfire plot, the madness, and the impossible choice he faced. And for the first time, someone sees him not as the Kingslayer, but as a man who saved a city. Brienne remembers him as half a corpse, half a god, stripped of his golden perfection, yet elevated by his honesty. This moment is transformative because Jaime finally lets someone glimpse the real man beneath the mask of arrogance and cynicism. To Brienne, he is no longer just the oathbreaker everyone despises. He is a man who once acted with true honor and who carries the unbearable weight of being hated for it. He shows Brienne that doing the right thing can be more complicated than she thought. While at dinner, Roose hints that he will free Jaime as long as Jaime absolves him of the blame for the loss of his hand. Jaime agrees, and Lord Bolton orders Steelshanks Walton to escort him to King's Landing. Brienne is to remain behind as Lord Vargo's prize. When Roose Bolton departs Harrenhal to join Robb at the Twins, Jaime pointedly tells him to give the young wolf his regards. It's a small moment, but it shows Jaime's wit and defiance, even in defeat. A reminder that he refuses to let the Starks have the last word over him. Yet what follows reveals how deeply Jaime has begun to change. When sleeping on a weirwood stump, Jaime has a dream about Brienne below Casterly Rock. Moved by this, he goes back to Harrenhal to rescue Brienne from Vargo, but finds she has been forced to fight a bear for Vargo's entertainment. When he finds Brienne thrown into a bear pit for sport, Jaime leaps in without hesitation. He doesn't do it for glory, or for Cersei, or even for strategy. He does it because it is right. Armed with nothing but courage, he risks his life to save hers, and in doing so proves that his bathhouse confession wasn't just words. In those moments, Jaime stops playing the Kingslayer and begins acting like the knight he always wanted to be. The boy who once failed to protect Elia Martell now saves Brienne. And though the realm will never know it, Jaime's decision to return to Harrenhal marks the true beginning of his redemption. During their travels, Jaime and Brienne learned that Robb and Catelyn were killed at the Red Wedding, which was plotted by his father Tywin, Roose Bolton, and Walder Frey. Unbeknownst to Jaime, Roose told Robb that Jaime sends his regards and then stabbed the king. What makes the Red Wedding even more tragic for Jaime is that Roose Bolton twisted his words into a curse. When Jaime told Roose to give Robb his regards, it was mockery, defiance, and defeat. But Bolton used that phrase at the very moment he betrayed Robb Stark, and so it became forever tied to Jaime in memory and song. For Lady Stoneheart, the vengeful revenant of Catelyn Stark, those words are proof that Jaime Lannister's hand was in the slaughter of her son. In truth, Jaime had no part in the Red Wedding. He was Tywin's prisoner of circumstance, not his ally. Yet the lie endures, and it becomes one of the driving reasons Lady Stoneheart hunts Jaime with such fury. It's the cruel irony of his life. Once again, the world condemns him for an atrocity he did not commit, just as it had for killing Aerys. His greatest curse is that when he does the right thing, no one sees it, and when others twist his words or deeds, he bears the blame. Jaime returns to King's Landing a changed man. His hair has grown a bit, having become short and bristly. His face is still thin and hollow, however, and he now has lines under his eyes, still making him look older. He's gone through hell, he's lost his hand, and he has no more patience for lies and schemes, which frustrates his lying, scheming family. Tywin wants Jaime to leave the Kingsguard and get married to rule the Rock. He gives him a Valyrian steel blade crafted out of Eddard Stark's greatsword Ice, but Jaime feels insulted by his father's gift of a sword when he knows how useless he is without his sword hand. He quarrels with his father and refuses to resign from the Kingsguard. He calls a meeting of the Order in White Sword Tower to take the measure of his sworn brothers and to remind them of their true duties. Jaime passes the Valyrian sword, now named Oathkeeper, to Brienne, tasking her to keep Sansa Stark safe from Cersei, and noting the irony of her looking after Sansa with Eddard Stark's own steel, ensuring that she is equally well provisioned by providing her with gold, a horse and armor. He also provides a letter sealed and signed by King Tommen I Baratheon, declaring she is about the king's business and not to be hindered. The shield she is given is the one he bore from Harrenhal. Sansa is my last chance for honor, Jaime says. So Brienne looks for her, for Catelyn's sake, and for Jaime's. Jaime learns that his biological son, King Joffrey I Baratheon, died at his own wedding feast. However, he did not really care about him. He did see how cruel, arrogant, and unstable he was. He's embarrassed that Joffrey is technically his son, but embodies none of his own ideal. Compare that to how genuinely he cares for Myrcella and Tommen. He admits he wishes he could claim them, raise them, and guide them. Following Joffrey's death, Cersei accuses Tyrion of his murder. When both trial by words and trial by battle fail Tyrion, Jaime still doesn't believe that Tyrion is the murderer. He forces Lord Varys to arrange Tyrion's escape from imprisonment. Jaime saves Tyrion from execution, but in the books, the brothers have a falling out when Jaime confesses to his brother an old sin. Years ago, Jaime had told him that Tysha, the girl Tyrion had secretly married, was a whore hired by Jaime. Their father Tywin had the girl raped by his soldiers and by Tyrion himself to teach them a lesson. However, Tysha was the crofter's daughter as she claimed to be and had loved Tyrion genuinely. Incensed at this revelation, Tyrion hits Jaime, and knowing that Joffrey was Jaime's son and not Robert's, falsely claims responsibility for his murder. As a final revenge, Tyrion reveals the truth about Cersei's sexual escapades with Sir Lancel Lannister and Sir Osmond Kettleblack. Tyrion storms off and, unbeknownst to Jaime, but with the aid of Varys and a secret passage, enters Tywin's private chambers and kills their father. Jaime increasingly sees Cersei as a lying, manipulative fool, and Cersei rejects this changed Jaime. So gradually, the lifelong lovers begin to break up. By the end of Book 3, Jaime feels he's lost everything. His sister and lover, his brother, his father, and his hand. Everything that makes him who he is, everything that he loved, is gone. All he has left is the Kingsguard, so Jaime turns to the White Book. The White Book records the history of each member of the Kingsguard. There are all these great heroes like Arthur Dane, with all these great deeds written in their pages. Jaime's page doesn't say much apart from his killing King Aerys, but there's still lots of blank space here. Jaime realizes he can fill his page, write his future, with whatever he chooses. Jaime lets his hair grow out again, as well as his beard, though some hairs are starting to turn gray. Following the murder of their father, Tywin, by their brother Tyrion, Cersei offers Jaime the position of Hand of the King, but he refuses. Jaime remains in King's Landing and stands vigil over Tywin. During the night, Cersei visits him again, begging him to accept the office of Hand, but once again he refuses. Cersei leaves angrily, stating that she was a fool for ever having loved him. This is another moment that shows just how far Jaime has drifted from the man he used to be. In the past, he would have bent to Cersei's will without question, even killed for her. But now, when she begs him to take up the Hand's chain, he refuses her twice. Where once he abandoned vows for Cersei, now he abandons Cersei for vows. His loyalty to her is fading, replaced by something more grounded. The sense of duty he is beginning to feel for Tommen. In the morning service, the sight of Lord Tywin's rotting body distresses the young King Tommen, who flees, causing Jaime to pursue and comfort him, suggesting he go away inside to cope. Jaime arranges security for the wedding of Tommen I Baratheon and Margaery Tyrell. Cersei refuses his invitation to dance during the wedding feast. During his next few days at King's Landing, Jaime finds himself increasingly at odds with his uncle, Sir Kevan Lannister, and his sister, Cersei. He attempts to give his best counsel to both, as well as to a newer member of the Kingsguard, Sir Loras Tyrell. In the show, Jaime clings to Cersei until the very end, but the books take him in another direction. When Cersei commands him to deal with the siege of Riverrun, he accepts, but not as her obedient lover. He goes on his own terms, accompanied not by her but by Sir Adam Marbrand and Sir Ilyn Payne, figures from his past who remind him of where he came from. Before leaving, he even commissions a golden hand, not as a weapon but as a symbol. The ornate prosthetic is heavy and clumsy, a hollow echo of the hand he lost, but Jaime embraces it anyway. It represents both his pride and his shame. The Kingslayer with his gaudy golden stump mocking the knight he once was. Jaime takes Lewis Piper and Garrett Page, who were made his squires as both of their families fought for House Stark. Lewis names Jaime's new horses Glory and Honor, and they are beckoned in Lannister Crimson and Kingsguard White respectively. Josmyn Peckledon becomes another squire for Jaime as a reward for his bravery in the Battle of Blackwater, and Jaime later encourages Peck to treat Pia well. As Jaime rides through the Riverlands, he begins to shape a new identity, one not as the Kingslayer, but as a man of honor. Haunted by his broken oaths, he now tries to keep his promises, to Catelyn by sending Brienne to find Sansa, and to himself by ending the siege of Riverrun without bloodshed, sparing the Tullys just as he swore he would. For the first time in his life, Jaime takes his vows as knight and Kingsguard seriously. He begins to protect the weak, defending Pia, punishing outlaws, and even showing mercy to noble houses like the Blackwoods. He delivers justice where he once mocked it, and his anger at the Mountain for killing a helpless boy mirrors the guilt he still carries for Bran. Jaime's arrogance hasn't vanished, and his sharp tongue still cuts deep, but his recklessness is gone. He even refuses to wear his golden prosthetic, saying, "Let them see the cripple, I will not show them a golden lie." In shedding the false image, Jaime starts to live closer to the knight he once dreamed of being, not defined by reputation, but by choice. During the journey, Jaime spars with Ilyn during the nights in order to train himself to fight left-handed. Along the way, he stops at Harrenhal, where he installs Sir Bonifer Hasty as Castellan and releases the northern prisoners kept there, including Sir Willis Manderley. He has an angry confrontation with Sir Ronnet Connington after the Knight of Griffin's Roost insults Brienne of Tarth. To rid himself of Red Ronnet, Jaime charges him and some of the Mountain's men with escorting Willis safely to Maidenpool, where the Northmen will be put on a ship to his home of White Harbor. Jaime stops at Darry after departing Harrenhal, Lady Amory Frey flirts with a disinterested Jaime, and his cousin, Lord Lancel, confesses to having slept with Cersei. At Riverrun, Jaime tries to cast himself as a peacemaker, the knight who ends wars without bloodshed. He imagines a new legacy, not the Kingslayer, but Golden Hand the Just. And in a way, he succeeds. He spares Edmure's life, gives the garrison a choice, and captures the castle without a single arrow loosed. But for all his efforts at honor, Riverrun also exposes the contradictions that still define him. To Edmure and Brynden, Jaime is still the Kingslayer. Jaime sends Ryman back to the twins and places command of the Frey contingent with his son, Edwin Frey. Taking Edmure as his own prisoner, Jaime tells Edmure that he is to be released and returned to Riverrun. If he yields the castle, the garrison will be spared and all that wish to join the Night's Watch will be allowed to do so. If he does not surrender, the castle will be sacked and burned, and Jaime will return Edmure's child by catapult as soon as his wife Rosalind Frey gives birth. Jaime has Tom of Seven Streams sing The Rains of Castamere to intimidate Edmure. His threats to Edmure are pure Tywin, intimidation dressed up as pragmatism. And though Jaime technically keeps his oath to Catelyn by sparing Tully lives, he delivers their ancestral home to the Freys, the very family who butchered Robb Stark at the Red Wedding. In the end, his threats work, and Edmure decides to yield the castle and be taken to Casterly Rock as a prisoner, but not before allowing Brynden to escape by swimming under Riverrun's Watergate at night. A furious Jaime sends some of his men to find the Blackfish, but they are unsuccessful. Jaime sends Edmure west in a column led by Sir Forley Prester. Also in Forley's company are the surviving Westerlings. This is Jaime's tragedy at Riverrun. No matter how hard he tries to build a better name, his actions remain stained by the Lannister cause. He cannot escape the regime that crowned a bastard king, devastated the Riverlands, and lit the spark of war, all of which, at its root, began with Jaime's own choices in Winterfell. The Blackfish's escape under cover of night is the perfect symbol. Jaime may seize castles, win parley, and issue commands, but he cannot capture respect, nor rewrite the memory of who he is. Maester Vyman brings Jaime a letter from Cersei, who has been imprisoned by the new High Septon and is to go to trial. Even though the Riverrun plot is shown in Season 6, this moment is omitted from the show. Cersei requests Jaime as her champion in a potential trial by combat. Jaime does not reply to the letter and orders Peck to burn it. Once, Jaime would have moved heaven and earth for her, but now he simply burns the letter, as if incinerating the last tie between them. The Kingslayer who once lived for Cersei begins to let her go, even as the world refuses to let go of who he used to be. Instead of racing back to save Cersei as she begs, Jaime rides deeper into the Riverlands. At Raventree Hall, he resolves a feud that has raged for centuries between Blackwood and Bracken, not with swords but with negotiation. He demands hostages, forces compromises, and secures Tommen's peace. But crucially, he refuses to shed needless blood. Where once he would have laughed at the idea of justice, Jaime now seeks it, trying to make his Golden Hand live up to the name Gold Hand the Just. At Pennytree, the change in him becomes clearer still. When his men advise him to storm the Holdfast, Jaime refuses. The old Kingslayer would have killed without hesitation, but the new Jaime would rather win obedience without slaughter. And then comes Brienne. She appears suddenly, claiming she has found Sansa Stark and begs Jaime to follow her alone. Whether this is truth or a trap is left unresolved. Jaime's story ends on this uncertain step, his choice to follow Brienne pulling him further from Cersei and deeper into his own redemption arc. Back in King's Landing, Cersei hears only rumors. Her twin has vanished in the Riverlands, perhaps with another woman. The gulf between them, once unthinkable, is now complete. In the books, this is the Great Divergence, Jaime turning away from Cersei to follow Brienne to chase a sense of honor and purpose that the Kingslayer had once scorned. However, his story in the show largely differentiates after Season 5, when the show started moving differently from the source material. In Season 5, instead of staying in the Riverlands to build a legacy of justice as in the books, show Jaime is sent on a mission to Dorne with Bronn. The storyline has little to do with his internal growth. It's a political errand to retrieve Myrcella. When she dies in his arms, it fuels his hatred for the Martells and deepens his bond with Cersei rather than pushing him towards self-reflection. Jaime returns to Cersei's side during the Faith Militant crisis. He leads the Lannister forces against the High Sparrow's allies and later confronts the Blackfish at Riverrun, where he forces Edmure to surrender the castle. But instead of seeking to act justly, Jaime here is still mostly an extension of Cersei's will. When she blows up the Sept of Baelor with wildfire, Jaime is horrified, echoing his trauma with Aerys, yet he remains tied to her. The books show Jaime burning Cersei's plea for help. The show keeps him by her side. At last, Jaime begins to fracture. He negotiates alliances with the Tyrells and fights against Daenerys, seeing firsthand the devastation of Dragonfire. His relationship with Cersei grows colder. She lies to him about aiding the North against the White Walkers, and for the first time, he openly defies her. The season ends with Jaime riding north, leaving Cersei behind, a moment meant to echo the book's earlier break. Jaime's final arc is about conflict between growth and regression. He fights bravely for the living at Winterfell, knights Brienne in one of the show's most powerful scenes, and seems ready to redefine himself at last. But then he slips back. Convinced he can never escape who he is, Jaime leaves Brienne and returns to Cersei. They die together under the Red Keep, a tragic end that frames him not as the man who overcame his demons, but as one who could never let go of them. In the books, Jaime is walking a path toward honor and independence. In the show, his story loops back to tragedy, a man forever bound to Cersei, even in death. But how will Jaime's story continue in the books? George R.R. Martin has set Jaime up very differently from his show counterpart. But one thing is clear, no matter how much Jaime tries to change, his past still comes back to him. If Jaime really wants to be a better person, if he wants redemption, surely he must somehow answer for his crimes. How else can he escape the judgment and trauma that haunt him? If Jaime is to have a brighter future, he must face his past. Catelyn Stark gets murdered at the Red Wedding. In the books, she's resurrected as Lady Stoneheart, a vengeful spirit consumed by grief and hate. She seizes control of the Brotherhood without banners and turns them into her instrument of revenge, hunting down everyone connected to the Red Wedding. By the end of Book 4, Stoneheart captures Brienne and forces her into a cruel choice. Bring her Jaime or die. And in Book 5, it seems Brienne leads Jaime into Stoneheart's grasp somewhere in the Riverlands. Lady Stoneheart is more than just a character. She's the embodiment of Jaime's past sins. She's the mother of Bran, the boy Jaime crippled to keep his incest secret. She's the widow of Ned Stark, the man whose judgment still haunts Jaime as the Kingslayer. She's the woman Jaime swore he would help, promising to return Sansa and Arya, oaths he has not fulfilled. And she's a Stark, the house Jaime's family betrayed, butchered, and brought low. The ghosts of Jaime's failures, the Kingsguard, Rhaegar, Ned, have always lived in his mind. But Lady Stoneheart lives in the flesh. He can't laugh her off, can't hide behind cynicism or Cersei. This is the confrontation he's been avoiding all his life. Will he be another broken oath, another corpse dangling from Stoneheart's noose? Or will he finally rise above the Kingslayer's shame, not just talking about honor and justice, but living it, righting the wrongs of his past? There are many paths Jaime's story could take. He might ride with the Brotherhood to avenge the Red Wedding, or perhaps help Brienne put Lady Stoneheart to rest. We won't know until the Winds of Winter arrives. But one thing feels likely, Jaime will survive his encounter with Stoneheart because his fate is bound to Cersei. From the very start, Cersei has defined Jaime's life. He joined the Kingsguard for her, he fathered children with her, he even tried to kill for her. And yet Cersei doesn't make him better. She brings out the worst, the vanity, the cruelty, the selfishness. And if Jaime is ever to change, to truly redeem himself, he must face his twin. The show completely erased the part about Cersei's prophecy. In the books, Cersei is obsessed with the prophecy that says she'll be killed by her Valonqar, her little brother. She's certain this means Tyrion, but many readers believe it points to Jaime, that in the end, the man who has loved her most will also be the one who destroys her. It still seems likely that Jaime and Cersei will die together in the books. That much of the prophecy will hold true. But their deaths won't come as they did in the show, buried in the rubble under the Red Keep. Instead, their end will have a very different cause and a far deeper meaning. Cersei is spiraling further into paranoia, cruelty, and self-destruction. If she unleashes wildfire on King's Landing, as many believe, she'll become the very thing Aerys was, the Mad Queen, ready to burn her people rather than lose them. And that would put Jaime right back where he was at 17, sworn to protect a monarch he loves, but forced to choose between oath and conscience, between love and the lives of thousands. If Jaime kills Cersei, it won't just be about prophecy. It will be the culmination of his whole arc. In killing her, Jaime would symbolically kill the worst parts of himself. The cruelty, the vanity, the corruption she always encouraged. The twins came into the world together, but they won't leave it the same. Cersei would die consumed by her hate, while Jaime could die redeemed, remembered not as Kingslayer, but as a true knight at last. Whether Jaime dies a redeemed hero or falls back into ruin, one truth is certain. His life is the story of a man torn between love and duty, between the oaths he swore and the oaths he broke. Perhaps in the end, Jaime will prove himself worthy of the White Book, or perhaps he'll forever remain the Kingslayer. But that tension, that tragic struggle, is what makes Jaime Lannister unforgettable.